Living as a nomad capitalist, as an expat, a perpetual traveler, someone with investments and wealth overseas, presents a challenge in that you need to find the right professional to handle your taxes, to file the necessary tax returns and make sure you stay in compliance. So in this video, I'm going to share some of my best tips for finding the best expat tax preparer and making your taxes easy. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson. If you want to learn more about what Nomad Capitalist does for offshore tax, banking, investing, things like second passports, go to nomadcapitalist.com. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my experience over many years of handling taxes as an expat. Now, I recently filed my final U.S. tax return a couple years ago. I expatriated from the United States. I kept a few assets in the United States that I was in the process of selling off. And so I had to file just recently the last ever tax return in the United States. And so this video largely will apply to folks who are U.S. citizens, U.S. green card holders, since those folks have an obligation to pay tax no matter where they live in the world on all of their worldwide income and assets. However, it could also apply if you are leaving your country and you have assets that you've left behind. It could also apply if you're continuing to live in your home country and you have investments overseas, okay, that may not have tax benefits but may have investment benefits. You may have money in offshore bank accounts, etc. So you don't have to live overseas to fall into this category. You may or may not. There's a lot of different people who can benefit from this. And so the first thing that I want you to be aware of, tip number one, is have your strategy done ahead of time. There's a difference between strategy and preparation. What we've done on our Nomad Capitalist team as we've expanded our company is we have a strategy team that works with me in terms of creating the strategy. We talk to folks, we figure out what needs to be done, what are the proper structures, how does everything need to be laid out, and then we'll hand that over when someone wants to execute that to an operations team. And what I've told the operations team is, you guys need to work with me, you need to work with the strategy team, occasionally with the research team, which finds new bank accounts, new opportunities, etc. But if you're in actual execution mode, your goal is basically putting together the table. You are putting together the IKEA table with those crazy instructions and that weird little wrench. You know, that's your job. And so ideally, you want to have your strategy figured out before you go to an expat tax service. Most of the expat tax services out there, especially for Americans, they don't focus on strategy. They're not going to help you with transfer pricing or structures. They're going to file the actual returns. You need to get your strategy done somewhere else. So Nomad Capitalist works on the strategy side with our tax network. We don't really work on the tax preparation side. We refer people out and say, hey, for your level of complexity, here's the person that we would recommend. And so what you want to do is then go to that person. Once you have that person, you want to be able to say, hey, here's the strategy. You have documentation of that. You know, one mistake I see people making when they're going offshore is they just kind of make it up as they go along. You know, we've all been there at one point, but you want to have proper documentation. You want to have memorandum. You want to have all of your ducks in a row just to hand over to someone so that they can understand what's going on. So the second tip is understand your needs. Take a clear inventory of what it actually is that you need. And this is where it comes to, you know, when I'm helping someone, I'll assign them to a relevant person with experience, whether it's an attorney, a high-level preparer, just kind of a garden variety preparer. I remember I developed a sort of friendship with a guy who was doing a lot of renovations at my house in the United States many years ago, almost a decade ago. And one night in the garage, he said, you know what the worst thing is in my business is people call up and they say, hey, can you just come over, right? Just is like the worst word in any kind of sales environment. Hey, can you just come over and hang all these cabinets in my kitchen? You know, can you just come over and clean up the flood in my basement? You know, you have 5 minutes, right? Like so many things in the offshore world, like so many things in life, I think sometimes people go in either direction more so than needed. And you know, if you are just, you know, if you have a job overseas, you know, if you're working somewhere else and you just need some help with tax treaties or a foreign tax credit, maybe you've got a bank account that pays your bills, you need to file an FBAR if you're a U.S. citizen, you know, that you can probably just hire most of the preparers online. They should be able to handle that for you. If you have, you know, multiple foreign companies, if you have an actual strategy in place with one company feeding into another, or different companies, or transfer pricing, or employees around the world, or multiple offshore bank accounts, or anything confusing, then that's not going to fall into the category of just a garden variety preparer. You want to have someone who understands that. They may still be the person who's putting the proverbial table together, but you're not just going to hire the person where they just churn out stuff. One thing that I look at is, and this is not true to everyone because a lot of people do this, but for me, having always had a very complex tax return, both as an expat and when I lived in the United States, I never really liked the thing of, hey, just upload your documents to our Dropbox or whatever. And it's like I wanted to explain, here it is, and here's what this is, and here's what that is, and have a bit more interaction. There are a couple good firms that I know that they do the Dropbox thing, but if you're working with someone who the Dropbox is part of kind of just, it's like a mill, tax return mill, that's fine. I'm not against that. But that would be for someone who's more of, hey, I live in the United States, I took Andrew's advice and I have bank accounts overseas, and I got to report them. Can you help me do my FBAR? Okay, cool, right? Not so complicated. Or, again, I have a job somewhere overseas. Maybe I have one single company, there's nothing confusing about it, I need to file this form and that's it. That can be in that approach. But anything where it gets complicated, if you are a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur, you probably don't want to be taking the Dropbox approach. And so you'll want to understand your needs and making sure you're not trying to shove something above someone's level. Okay. Tip number 3 is you want to make sure you're hiring a specialist no matter what. I always connect people with offshore tax experts. I can't think of a time, unless someone has a domestic structure. Unless someone has some kind of domestic work, then maybe I'll send them to a domestic person. But any kind of international tax stuff, you're going to an international tax person. And I've heard some of the stories from folks, well, I've known this guy for a long time. My family used him. Or I've heard, maybe someone's already overseas for a couple of years or already has overseas assets for a couple of years. It's been working out so far, no problem. So far so good. Or I'll hear, well, his office is in Chinatown, New York. It's very international. He understands international. No, he doesn't. Get someone who focuses exclusively on international. Because let me tell you, I've seen people, multiple people, very high-level people, loving people, tremendous people, who have gone overseas. Or again, in some of these cases, they're just ultra-high net worth folks with investments overseas. They hired one of these big 4 firms, or one of the firms in that ecosystem, similar, and they've had problems. I had a guy call me and said he hired one of the biggest, most famous accounting firms to do some stuff for him. He ended up with a $3 million bill. So it doesn't matter how prestigious the firm is. In fact, some of the best international tax firms for just everyday entrepreneurs that are offshore, they don't have much patina to them. So you have to have an international firm. Again, it's not to be expensive. In fact, my tax prep costs, I believe, actually went down when I left the United States. I had businesses in the United States. I lived in the United States. I hired a domestic preparer. They did a great job. Very nice guy. When I went overseas, I quickly realized that guy could not help me. He could not answer the most simple of questions, even about, in the U.S., the foreign earned income exclusion. I had to fight, and he had to go and open up the law and get a whole team around the office together and be like, oh yeah, he actually does qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion. They did not understand the most simple things, and this was a high-level firm. So I actually paid less going overseas, and I got things done very efficiently. You don't have to pay more. And I don't want to discourage you from going overseas or opening that bank account or making that investment because you need to get someone like this involved. It may even be less expensive. It's not about the cost necessarily, it's about the expertise. International only. I've seen too many people whose accountants who are international-ish, the guy in Chinatown, for example, who have gotten people into situations where you then need to go out and that you then need to seek an abatement, a penalty abatement from the tax authority because the most simple of forms was not filed. I didn't know I had to report my foreign company. I'm not living in a tax haven. I'm living in a high-tax country. Yeah, you need to report that. Oh, I didn't know I had to report my bank accounts. Yes. Who's been handling your taxes? So you'll want to get someone with international tax experience. That's very important. Tip number 4 is once you've found that person, you want to set clear deadlines. You know the phrase, no one wants to eat in an empty restaurant. And when it comes to the world of international tax, Again, I know most of the people in the field who are good, especially in the United States, but also in Australia and Canada, in New Zealand, and in the UK. I know a lot of these guys. And personally, I've worked with several of them over the years in the United States for myself and for my own friends outside of our business. I've been let down by some of them. Some of them are pretty good, and they remain in my Rolodex, as it were. But one thing I know is that, accounting, even entrepreneurial accountants and tax preparers, they sometimes need a little push, okay? I'm a go entrepreneur. We're never going too quickly. And obviously you don't want an accountant who's moving too quickly. You want someone who's methodical. But you need to be very clear in your expectations. So for my final tax return, I had a call with the guy in August, the year before. I really wanted to get ahead of it. And I said, here's what I need to do. I need to file this schedule, this. Do you agree? Yes, Andrew, I think we're in agreement. All right, great. I'm going to send you what I have for these real estate transactions. I already have it. I'm going to send it to you now. And January 1st, or as soon as I have it, I'm going to send you any other documents or facts and figures. And let's just file, and let's just be ready to go as soon as the filing system opens. And by doing that, I've avoided problems that I've had in the past where accountants will say, oh, we're so busy, it's tax time, and then tax time is over. Oh, we're going on a 1-month vacation. You can wait, right? And some folks actually, they kind of put themselves in situations where it's almost like they want to always be overwhelmed or doing absolutely nothing. And so if you set those deadlines and you do so in advance, you can avoid some of that overwhelm and you can get yourself to the front of the list. Because if you don't get yourself to the front of the list, a lot of these guys are going to deprioritize you. You want to be careful of that. Tip number 5 is stay calm. A lot of folks, they go overseas, they have these overseas assets, or they're making a transition in their life, moving out of their country. They fear there's going to be a problem. You should fear that there's going to be a problem if you're not following these steps. Again, if you're using the same person you've always used, that's going to be an issue. But if you have the right person, if you give them the right data, if you have the right strategy, if everything is done and ready to go beforehand, then I don't want you to freak out. Especially in the United States, there are a lot of rules. Penalties are high. You want to be careful. But that's why you have professionals. And this is why, for me, I don't like to cheap out. I like to pay what it takes. As much as my tax costs have actually decreased, I will sometimes go out and pay $10,000 for a quick report on a certain situation, or I will pay for advice. And I really want to do that before I'm doing the thing. And so what I recommend people doing is, again, don't make it up as you go along. Okay, have everything ready, especially strategically beforehand. And again, if you have a job and you're just moving to another country for a job, that strategy may take a couple minutes, but have the strategy ahead of time so that way it's just ready to go and you're not kind of, getting into it as the process unfolds. That is how I would find the best expat and the best international tax service for my Nomad Capitalist life. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.